Hello and welcome. In this video, we shall be talking about CSS units. We shall be learning the difference between absolute and relative units, and we shall be clearing any doubts that we might have through this lesson. So, what exactly are CSS units? Well, let's consider that I draw a box here, and then I add some text inside. Let's just write my website. CSS units define how big is big. They're going to define the height of this box. They're going to define how tall this box is going to be. They're going to define the width of this box, how wide this box is going to be, and they are going to define the size of this text. We can use them to increase the size of this text. We can make the text smaller, we can make it bigger, we can make a page bigger or smaller, and all those are managed by CSS units. So let me give you an example. Let's go to VS Code and let's see that hands on. I'm going to create another file, name that units.html. We are going to generate a code, name that CSS units, and here I am going to create a p tag, and let's say some text, and then I'm going to click go live. It's opened in index.html by default. I'm going to switch that to units.html, and there we go. Let's see. Okay, now we're at 100% zoom. Now we are going to style this text by using a property called font size. And the purpose of font size property is to increase or decrease the size of some text. Let's go back and add a class. I am going to add text dash large. Then I am going to create a style tag. Inside of it, I am going to create a new class called text dash large. And here I am going to add the font size class, font dash size, not class, sorry, font size property. And here I am going to set the font size to 16px. That px or pixel is the unit we are using. If you're solving physics questions, you would need to provide a unit with your answer. In CSS, you need to provide a unit with every value that you're providing. Let's go back, and now the size is set to 16 pixel. Let's try increasing that to something like 24. It's slightly bigger, and the pixel unit, the px unit that we're using, is one of the most common units out there. The purpose of this unit is to define some text that looks the same across all devices. If I open this web page in an iPhone, if I open that in a Mac, if I open that on a really small monitor, I open that in a really small iPhone, I open that on a wide gaming monitor, it's going to take up the exact same space. Unless, of course, we zoom it in or zoom it out. In that case, it would be bigger accordingly. But if our zoom level is the same, it's going to appear approximately same across all screen sizes. Let's take another example. I'm going to add another p tag, class equals to text dash small. Let's call that small text dot text dash sm, and I'm going to change the font size to 12 pixel, and now it appears smaller. Now let's try something interesting. I'm going to go back, remove this class and this element, and then I'm going to create a div tag place my p tag inside of it, and then I am going to add a class and name it box. Let's save that. There's no difference right now. Now we are going to apply some styling on a box tag or on a box class. I am going to add a width of 200 pixel and a height of 200 pixel. And we cannot see it right now because it doesn't have a border or background color, so I am going to give it a background color of light blue. Let's save that, and now our text is inside a box. If I increase its height or width, it's going to appear larger accordingly. Now it appears incredibly simple, and you might believe that we can use pixels for almost everything. They look the same. You can use them for a mobile device, you can use them for a desktop browser, they're going to appear the same. But there's one big issue with pixels. The issue is that let's consider that one of your clients come up, they tell you, hey, I need to wear glasses, I cannot read small text, I want you to make the text bigger. Now you need to go through all the classes that you have defined in your web page, and you need to increase the size in pixels you defined on every one of them. If you want to make this box bigger, we also want to increase the size of this text, we would not need to go back and we would need to increase every one of them manually. However, we don't have to do that. We can instead use another unit that does this automatically. So let's go back and write our first unit down first. Our first unit is pixel, or is called device pixel. Now let's go back, and the second unit that we're going to learn is RAM. And RAM stands for root M. M basically EM is a word by itself. Let's go back and change all of them to use RAM. We cannot change them directly. RAM is a lot more bigger than pixel. Therefore, I am going to decrease that to about 40 RAM, decrease that to about 20 RAM, and decrease this one to 1.5 RAM. It's slightly bigger. We would need to decrease its size further. Let's try 30 and 15. Okay, I guess it's reasonable. And now the RAM unit will allow us to change all the sizes in a web page by simply defining something like this. Now if I increase the size of this HTML font, all the other pages, all the other elements are going to be scaled accordingly. Let's increase that to 24 pixel. And now once we save, all the elements in our page have been made bigger. If we make that smaller, all the elements in our page will be styled accordingly. Now if we're trying to make a website make something like an accessibility switch that once clicked increases the size of everything on the page, we don't need to increase the size of everything on the page literally, we can just increase the font size of our HTML tag and everything on our page will be increased or decreased accordingly. Now let's go back and write down our second unit as well. Our first unit was pixel, our second unit is root M. For the third unit we are going to learn, just let's create a new page. I'm going to call that viewport.html. Let me define that in a moment. Viewport units. I'm going to add another div here, name that box. Then add a p tag here and call that, let's just call that text. And inside of it, I am going to write some text. Now let's navigate to this page. At the moment we haven't applied any styling yet, so let's go back and apply some styling. I am going to add the style tag, and here we are going to use another unit called VW. Let me define that. I am going to set the width to 10 VW and then the height to 7 VW, and then I am going to give it a background color of light blue. So VW is basically viewport width, and this is basically a viewport. The browser window that our code is being rendered in is a viewport. If I say viewport width or VW, it's this area, and if I say viewport height or VH, it's this area. And this box that we have just created is 10 VW or 10% of the viewport width. If I increase that to something like 50 VW, let me increase that to 50 VW, and the box will be increased to 50% of our browser window. And we can use that to do something interesting. If I change my box to say 100 VW and then I change its height to say 100 VH or viewport height, then it's going to cover the entire page automatically. But you might note that even though we have specified a height of 100 VH and 100 VW, it's still adding scroll bars. Does that mean that 100 VW is bigger than our browser's width? No. Basically, it's this space right here. And we can remove that space by using the reset trick that we have seen in a navbar. I can do margin 0, padding 0, not HTML, static, sorry, and box sizing border box. And once I save that, our scroll bars are gone and our box simply takes up the entire width and height of our web page. Now let's go back and decrease that to 50 VW and 50 VH. And next I am going to add a style on our text, and I am going to set that to font size 6 VW. And let's reduce that. I am going to say, let's just make that 1 VW. Okay, maybe 2 VW. Okay, I guess it looks a lot more cleaner now. And now we can do something interesting. If I resize my browser window, our text and our box is rescaled accordingly. If I make the browser window bigger, our box will become larger. If I make our browser window smaller, it would make our box smaller. If we take an example, I am going to rescale this browser window, and our box and our text becomes larger accordingly. If I maximize this window, this is the biggest size we are going to get. Now to rephrase, the third and fourth units we have learned are VW, viewport height, viewport width, sorry, and viewport height accordingly. There are a lot more units. We have units like IN for inches, mm for millimeters, we have percentage, we have m. We're not going to learn any of them right now. None of them are important for us. We're just going to stick with 4 units, and they are enough for your entire. And I mean that literally. If you know these 4 units, you don't need to learn any other unit in your entire career of web development. Now, let's cover another concept. We have covered that already. I'm just going to describe that further. There are two major types of units in CSS. The first are absolute units or fixed units. and the second are relative units. And at simplest, absolute units are the units that don't scale according to anything. If we increase the size of a browser, if we increase the height on its parent element, if we increase the height of its root element, it's not going to matter, it's going to appear exactly the same. And we have already learned an absolute unit, which is pixel or px. There are others out there like in, that we are not going to learn. Now for relative units, we have learned three of them, namely rem, vw, and vh. And again, there are other units out there like percent, m, lv, lh, sv, sh, and something like cw, but none of them are important. Only these four are going to be used. Let me repeat them once more. The first unit that we learned is pixel, which is going to appear at the same scale on all screen sizes. We can use that to define a base text for our base size for our web page. For example, if we want our headings to become larger, we can probably apply a style of maybe 16 pixel, not 16, maybe around 32 pixel on each heading. Then we have rem, which is used to also increase the height or size of text. But the idea is that we can change the size of rem across the entire web page by changing the font size on our HTML element. Therefore, if we increase the size of our HTML element, the entire page is going to be scaled accordingly. Then VW is the width of browser window. We can use it to take up the entire browser window or maybe make something that takes up half of the browser window. Then we have VH, which is almost similar. It represents the height of our browser window. Therefore, if we specify something with a width of 100 VW and a height of 100 VH, it's going to take up our entire browser window. And well, I'm going to wrap that up here. You don't have an assignment this time, just make sure that you understand all of this. Review the video if you need to, and make sure that you understand this before we move on.